The Bruins are skating here. Their plan to play this out and vilify Swayman worked so much better than I thought it would. Jeremy Swayman signs 8 times 8.25, $66 million. Our long national nightmare is over. Jeremy Swayman gives the press conference. He's smiley. He's happy. There's a picture of Don Sweeney and him sitting down signing the contract. It's very Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. Fuck you, you bitch. Coded. But this is done, and I feel like there's still going to be some sort of collateral damage just as far as reputations go and what people like. So many Bruins fans have been already so fucking annoying about this. And it's like they landed on the contract that we all thought was going to happen at the beginning of this. We thought it was going to be 8 times between $8 and $8.5 million. It ends up literally in the middle of that. I'm a fucking dummy. And I was saying, just do the Sorokin contract. They give him exactly the Sorokin contract, and bam, it's done. Yet, a bunch of Bruins fans I was seeing yesterday getting mad at me for noting that, getting mad at everybody. Well, actually, Swayman was holding out for way too much. But if the team is at $6.2 million times 4 years, and the player is at the McAvoy contract, which is 8 times $9.5 million, and they settle at 8.25 over 8 years or times 8 years, who was the one who had to move more? Who was the one who had the more incorrect stance at the beginning? Clearly the Bruins. Like, I'm glad this is done. I hope that we all do move on. But if you're going to get mad at anybody, this whole like Swayman was being an asshole and fucking everything up, he really wasn't. Maybe like he was emotional at points, but the contract ended up being what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, okay. So, but devil's advocate here, I can understand some people being upset if they perceive Swayman as being the guy who like was more firm in his 9.5 camp for longer and dragged this out. Like we don't really know when the Bruins moved off of the 6 point blank number, and like it seems like if Cam Neely goes to a podium and says we have 64 million reasons why he should be a Bruin, that number probably existed on the table. Maybe who's to know? Like close to that number. Like I think that we said last week that like that was the number that they were going to be like final at, which not the case because they go to 66. But if they were close to 64 and everybody knew that they were going to end up at 8.25 or whatever, like you say, it's not as far off from the Bruins end as it was from Swayman.
But what the Bruins were talking, and they were happy to say things in the media. Neely says the 64 million number. Don Sweeney has his little freak out over spit and chiclets. If any of the stuff that was coming out was wrong, if the $6.2 million AAV was wrong, you don't think that would have led the list of Don Sweeney's complaints? And if they indeed had offered $64 million and Louis Gross comes out and says, no, they haven't, you don't think the Bruins, who are already deep enough into this media-wise, would say, yes, we did?
No, I do think that like both sides of those things are probably true. Like I think that Elliot, again, said on 32 Thoughts or whatever that the Bruins were like a million or two short of 64, right, and they were setting that as their final number. I don't think that Ryan Whitney, I believe it was Ryan Whitney who threw out the 6 point something number.
6.2.
I don't think that he's throwing that out there with no sense or for no reason. Like I think that those things are both probably true, but I think that it probably moved closer to the middle at some point, and Swayman was maybe holding out for the 9.5 or a bigger number for longer and dragging the thing out, which I think that's what is pissing off Bruins fans because he misses the majority of camp. He's not going to be ready to go for opening night, and that's where they're upset. But at this point, get the fuck over it. He's signed. Like he got more than what the Bruins wanted to offer him. He, quote unquote, wins the negotiation. Hey, thanks for watching the channel.
We appreciate everybody who checks out our stuff, but 80% of our viewers are not actually subscribed to this page, so if you could smash that subscribe button, it would go a very long way for us.
The more subscriptions we have, the more visibility we get from YouTube, which allows us to do more.
So press that button. Thank you. All I know is 9.5 is closer to 8.25 than 6.2 is to 8.25. And I say all I know. I'm not positive of that. But Sean is looking at me as though that is correct.
I said a lot of numbers at once, and I didn't really put it together.
9.5 is closer to 8.25, famously $1.25 million,
Yes.
then 6.2 is to 8.25,
Which is
2 million,
2.05.
over $2 million.
Yeah.
So one way or another, the team and Swayman, what's important there is Swayman was at 8 years. So like what his ask ends up so much closer to what it ended up being than what the Bruins were. Like the Bruins were not.
Well, the Bruins'
on the
initial
same
offer
planet.
was ridiculous.
And the Bruins pride themselves on not doing ridiculous initial offers. So they were serious, theoretically, about throwing that out there. And again, I've said this the whole time. The Bruins, there have been moments where the Bruins over the years, I've noted it too many times, I won't repeat it, like haven't just shown the faith in Jeremy Swayman you'd think they would. But I think a lot of this negotiation was more about, we don't believe in paying goaltenders a lot anymore. We think the league is moving towards not having a big name goaltender, whether it's, look at what the Oilers just did, paying a guy 2.65 or whatever it is. But you can do that when you have two of the best five. Like the goaltending wasn't going to be the strength of that team. The strength of your team, like it or not, is defense and goaltending. So sorry, this is the roster you have. This is how you win. You have to keep the guy.
No, I think you absolutely have to keep him. But I also think that they may not want to like have their goaltender be one of their highest paid players, but I don't think that they've been shy at giving out big contracts to goalies that they really like. Like the Tuukka deal wasn't exorbitant or anything, but he was a high paid goalie.
Right,
when
but
they gave
also,
out that.
so like I think of this as a change in their view on this and like a trend that they think they're adapting to. Also, that deal was given out by the previous regime.
Yeah.
That deal also, by the way, I have so many people who are mad at me online, and normally I don't care about that, but they're not operating in facts. They're like, why does Jeremy Swayman think that he, as an RFA, can get this deal that RFA goalies have never gotten before? Look at literally the same team. Tuukka Rask got, by percentage of the cap, which is how you follow these things, a bigger deal. 8 years times a higher percentage of the cap. And at that point in his career, although he was coming off an insane playoff run, regular season wise, he hadn't played a million games. I think he'd played 2 more games. Somebody had out there, it might have been Dan Powers. He'd played like 2 more games than Swayman has in a regular season. So this has happened before. Swayman hasn't totally like turned the NHL on its head with this contract. He definitely did not take a hometown discount, which is fine. You're allowed to do that. But I think people get carried away with how much of a disruptor he was really trying to be, because the end game, Sean, if you want to throw up the highest paid goalies in the league, and we'll include Carey Price there, Bob at 10, Vasilevsky at 9.5, Hellebuck at 8.5, and then Swayman and Sorokin tied.
Like if you're looking at just the number and the AAV here, that's like completely fair.
And especially considering it's at the beginning of the contract. Like,
right.
I say again, I'd rather have Jeremy Swayman at 8 times 8.25 than Ilya Sorokin at 8 times 8.25. I know that right now Swayman has questions about his immediate conditioning and about not seeing an NHL shot in a million years, but Ilya Sorokin, with what he went through last year and what he's coming off of injury-wise, give me Swayman.
I'm also going to say, like, I love Connor Hellebuck, but would you rather have Connor Hellebuck at 8.5 starting at age 31? Like, people want to make the argument that Swayman doesn't deserve this contract because he hasn't been the full-time starter yet in his career, and he's only played 1 playoff series and had 1 playoff series win. Like, sure, but he showed last year he's a fucking dog in the playoffs, and you're getting the prime years, regardless if he's an RFA or not. You're getting prime years of Jeremy Swayman at a lower AAV than Connor Hellebuck. And like, you can make the comparison between those two players and who's better and whatever you think. But I think I'm going to take the guy who is, number one, proven that he can do it in the playoffs, and number two, going to get those prime years. We saw Hellebuck last year fucking dog shit in the first round. As much as I like that guy and think that he's great, he was dog shit in the first round last year. So this contract, I think, is very fair for all parties involved.
Absolutely. Again, this is the contract that we thought was going to happen. And I guess for drama's sake, we're picking who we're most mad at. But even, I mean, I said it at the time when Neely threw out the 64 million reasons thing. I was like, you're starting training camp and you've just gotten to 8 times 8. What the heck are you doing? What have you been doing that you just got here? And even if he's asking for $11 million or whatever, you're just getting to $8 million AAV? No, that's a shame on you. You should have been here by now. And I'm not a master negotiator, but like, have that on the table a lot sooner and draw a line. Say, like, we are literally not talking to you until you can tolerate this offer, and come back and say, no, we won't. We want 8.5 or something like that. Like, the Bruins aren't getting. If you want to be mad at Swayman, be mad at whoever you want to be. Just don't be an asshole to anybody. But the Bruins are skating here. Their plan to play this out and vilify Swayman worked so much better than I thought it would.
Yeah, I think that ultimately I land on this could have been handled much better by both sides. It didn't have to go on this long. But at the end of the day, you got a very fair contract for both sides. The Bruins get to keep their like borderline elite, very good to elite goaltender for the next 8 years. And everybody kind of wins here, as long as this hasn't created an irreversible rupture between the two sides, which I don't think it should. And I don't think that ultimately Bruins fans should be like keeping this in their pocket as a reason to fucking hate Jeremy Swayman or go into this narrative every time he has a bad game or whatever. Like, that's the only thing that I'm worried about carrying over from this, is like the annoying people that are looking for any reason to dump on this guy like Felger. Like, you know that every time Jeremy Swayman has a bad spell of games, that Felger is going to bring up that this contract negotiation, how sensitive he was, how much of a baby he was, and just completely ignore the other side and how this happened. So I hope that's not what happens. Ultimately, I'm very happy with where this lands. The only thing that I'm going to complain about is that we have to see Joonas Korpisalo in Game 1.
We all silly like the mayor.